Well, it's been a week on Coronation Street, and a lot's happened. Let's just jump right into it, okay? So, what storylines have been going on this week? Well, there have actually been, I've counted, there's been 8 separate storylines, so I've got a lot of work to do today. So, first things first, what's Duncan Doughnut up to? Duncan has planted the burner phone in the gutter in Sally's house. Now, originally the big problem with the storyline is the police shouldn't have taken it as seriously as they did without actual evidence that Sally has the phone. Finding the phone raises Tim's suspicions that Sally might have actually had an affair with Duncan Doughnut. Tim's dad has the idea of covering the phone with a plant plot so that nobody's DNA can be found on the phone. However, when Gina overhears Tim on the phone, she assumes that Tim is dubbing her in, so Gina interferes and hides the phone, which, if anything, makes Sally look more guilty because, due to the fact that since Sally had never seen the phone, she'd never touched the phone, it wouldn't have been as incriminating as it is with Gina having tried to dispose of it in a drain, significantly compromising the investigation. Gina, like Tim, for interfering with the case, is just let off with a caution. But she is arrested for perverting the course of justice. However, Gina manages to worm her way back into Sally's good books. And we find Sally, Gina and Paula, Sally's lawyer, all together in the bistro, having a drink together, which I thought was a nice moment because it sort of establishes the camaraderie between Sally, her old friend from school who's representing her, and her sister Gina. And we can see a bit of the banter that Sally and Gina have. It fills me, or supposedly fills me, with confidence about Sally's case. But there is no telling what will happen. It is unfortunate this week that Dev decides that Gina is a bit too much for him and decides that he needs to leave Gina. Really sad because I do like Dev and I thought Gina and Dev could have worked as one of the Corrie couples. What I'm really worried about is earlier Tim tried to put in a good word for Gina and we saw the way that Gina looked at Tim, that I'm worried that with all this Duncan business, Tim's going to feel more and more sceptical about Sally, ultimately leading to him maybe having an affair with Gina, which I really do not want to see happening, but it almost looks like that might be on the cards based on the foreshadowing that we saw in Friday's episode. Now, Sean was off the streets. Apparently all you have to do these days to stop being homeless is tell people you're homeless and they'll give you a home. Maybe I should try that. We'll start with the beginning of the week because Sean obviously was very embarrassed about his situation, that anytime a character would see him begging or queuing up for food, he would always hide, like when he saw Billy and Rana together at the hospital last week. And this week, while he was queuing for food for the homeless, he sees Billy, starts to hide. As soon as Billy sees him, he pretends that he's a volunteer instead of there to actually get some food because he's starving. Where Billy gives the line, "It's a lot easier to end up homeless than you think," to Sean, because those Corrie writers just love a bit of irony and they love trying to weave it into every single story thread. Carol obviously sees Sean working there and Sean sort of explains he doesn't want to tell Billy that he was homeless. Carol understanding, but she has problems of her own. She's currently addicted to angel dust or whatever it is. And she's decided to go into the prostitution industry just to, raise a bit of capital, to get her a bit more funding, to resolve some of the cash flow issues that she might be having. Anyway, Sean tries to stop her with the whole, don't do something you've been doing for a while because it's dangerous and this time it's going to end badly, which it does cliche. And the next time we saw Carol, she was dead. Dead tired of the hustle and bustle of homeless life, surviving on a day-to-day basis, and resigned to a hospital bed with bruises all over her face after a punter tried to kill her. He decided he didn't want to pay her or respect her or treat her like a human being. So now she's in hospital. And finally, Sean tells Billy he's homeless. And what does Billy do? Billy gives him a home, meaning that Sean is not homeless. Obviously, he has to get cross with Billy and Eileen first before he decides to accept the help. I was expecting maybe for that to be dragged out a bit longer, but as you know, I never really like it when a storyline's dragged out too much. Maybe the whole storyline with Sean was resolved a bit too easily, but at the same time, it's one of those storylines that can just be easily resolved because as soon as you have a home, you are no longer homeless. Can anyone let me know in the comments when Emma started living with Billy and Summer, because for the life of me, I cannot actually remember Emma living there or moving in there. Apparently, Emma was staying in Summer's room, which to me sounds a bit strange, especially when Summer's about, 12, 13? And you think, what 12, 13-year-old's going to want a grown woman living in their room? And what grown woman's going to want to be living in the same room as a 12, 13-year-old? I imagine that beggars can't be choosers. We don't want to see Emma on the same streets as Sean. We'll get back to Emma in a second. Let's just finish talking about Sean. He now has a home. All he needs is a job. So Sean tries to get a job at the care centre for cats. He also tries to get his job back from Carla. And while he's on his way to his new job at the cat centre, who makes an appearance but the Coronation Street cat? The cat that we see in the opening titles every day. Every Monday, Wednesday or Friday. The Coronation Street cat walks among us. He has graced us with his presence, and we are not worthy. Sean and Billy decide to pay Carol another visit at the hospital before she gets discharged to try and get her to go to rehab. Carol is adamant she doesn't want to, so Sean and Billy insist. So then Carol allegedly changes her mind, and she says, I just want to say goodbye to a few friends before I go, and I'll meet at the tram station. We all know she's not coming. It's the whole say goodbye to a few people so I can run off cliche. And surprise, surprise, she runs off, and we don't see her again. I'm sure we will catch up to her soon, and we'll get her to go to rehab. Anyway, that's Sean. Anyway, I did gloss over the Emma situation because Emma did decide to move out of the flat, despite what Billy wanted. It must be hard for an adult to share a bedroom with a child. You've got to think that if Emma does meet that special someone, like maybe Seb, or someone completely different, or maybe it's a heavy night and she meets someone that takes her fancy, if she wants to maybe connect with that person on a deep and physical level, she would have to arrange it as an away fixture. So she decides to move out. But Emma is involved in a storyline this week, and it's a love triangle. And don't we just love triangles? Now, I am confused watching it because I didn't know that Faye and Seb were still together, because I remember Faye saying she wanted to live with her mum, and I think it was implied that she didn't want to do a long-distance relationship. But for some reason, Faye and Seb are still together. Seb and Emma have been doing a lot of flirting with each other, and I was assuming that was okay because Seb and Faye were broken up. But since they are still together, I'm not entirely sure what's happened, if there has been a conversation that I've missed or something. Anyway, it turns out that Seb actually wants to be with Emma, and he just wants to be mates with Faye. I'm sure that Faye will be very understanding when you tell her Seb. Oh, will she? Rana and Imran's dad is still dead, and Leanne did sleep with Imran, which was very disappointing and predictable, and understandably, she is a bit annoyed at Imran for admitting a key detail that his dad died the same day that he pulled her. But Leanne's all forgiveness and decides to work as his PA, and actually manages to set up a nice little barrier between Imran and his ex-wife Sabine, who Imran inexplicably doesn't like. Rana still feels very guilty for being gay. because Coronation Street are firm believers that if you're a Muslim, you're not allowed to be gay. And Rana, being gay, feels guilty for being gay and being a Muslim. Because, according to Coronation Street, Muslims are not allowed to be gay. Kate has immediately gone from being okay with Rana denying their relationship to not being okay with Rana denying their relationship. That's handy. Ooh, Rana, you found yourself a keeper in Kate. I mean, it's refreshing to see the show's non-Muslim characters being okay with characters being gay, but the Muslim characters really not being okay. I regretfully glossed over a very funny line with Sally when she was at the pub with Gina and Paula, where Paula talks about her daughter going on a gay cruise, and Sally saying, "Oh, that's great, because I have a gay daughter that's a lesbian too." But anyway, thank you very much, Coronation Street, for teaching me that it's okay to be gay unless you're a Muslim. I'm sure that a lot of people will be pleased with that. For a while this week, it looked like we had a new antagonist in the show. There was a villain on the cobbles, and her name was Jenny Connor. Michelle and Robert walked over to the Rovers hand in hand. It was shrouded in green sheets of tarpaulin. "I can't believe what Jenny's doing," says Michelle. "Did someone say my name in vain?" says Jenny, appearing from behind the green curtain of tarpaulin. It was a very funny storyline, although I could only really appreciate the humour once I realised that it was actually a joke. Like the rest of the residents of the street, I fell hook, line and sinker for what Jenny and Johnny were doing. I was really worried. They said they were going to turn the name from Rovers Return into Rovers with a Z. They were going to get rid of the darts board. They were going to get rid of the hot pot. They were going to get rid of the picture of Betty. They were saying that everyone needs to come there smart now because it's now a posh place. It's a working class pub. But don't worry, because it was all just a joke. Ha ha ha, very funny, well done. And yes, you can argue the whole Chekhov's gun thing. It didn't really amount to anything significant in the long run, but it was very entertaining once I knew that it was a joke. Obviously, you expect with all the foreshadowing for them to actually do something drastic to change the pub, resulting in the storyline going on for 2 or 3 weeks, with a lot of the regulars boycotting the pub and protesting until they eventually decide to change it back, which didn't happen. But, as I said, it was very entertaining, so I don't really mind. I can watch it again. Yay. Very entertaining. Now, Henry is working at the Rovers too. Now, Henry is in a bit of trouble with the Posh Mafia, who actually are credited as Posh Thug number 1 and Posh Thug number 2, if you take a look at the credits. And it's very funny and everything when they're confronting Henry, but I don't like the idea of antagonists being comedy relief villains, because it stops you from being able to take them seriously. Yes, they are funny, but I think the threat would feel much more significant if they were just deadly serious and just a bit more professional. Come on, guys, you're professional thugs. You could rehearse your strategy of securing the funds that you need from your victim. Anyway, Henry sent many threatening texts about Veronica, who is the axe that's going to break his legs unless he finds £20,000. Henry decides to not do the sensible thing, which would be to call the police. Instead, he decides to fake an accident and sue the Rovers for negligence. I know firms like Injury Lawyers for You and that are good, but can they really fine somebody £20,000 for falling down the stairs and causing themselves minor injury? I don't think so. But as we know, whenever a character's having financial difficulties, another character, preferably one close to them, just magics up some money at that precise time. So obviously we can understand that Henry is going to try and get his hands on Rita's cheque for £15,000, even though it is £5,000 off the amount of money he actually needs. Maybe it would just result in his foot getting broken instead of his whole leg. Again, it baffles me that he hasn't thought of calling the police. It's not like he's done something illegal that he's being blackmailed for. It's just because of a messy divorce. Of course, once Gemma finds out that Henry tried to nick the 15 grand from Rita, she'll leave him and then she'll get with Chesney, who's just going to suck all the fun, all the character and all the personality out of her and try and convert her into an emotionless bore like himself. Chesney's like a Cyberman. He wants to upgrade Gemma. He will remove all of your emotions. You will become like me. You will be emotionless. You are human point 2. Nice Doctor Who reference there for anyone who follows the show. And I have to say personally that I'm really looking forward to the new series of Doctor Who, because for the first time in 55 years, we have a lady doctor. A lot of fans are split about this. Some love it, some hate it, some just don't really care. In my opinion, I'm really looking forward to seeing where this is going to go. I'm not a fan of the idea of actively seeking a woman to play the Doctor, but I do like the idea of them opening the auditions up to men and women and choosing the best actor or actress among them to play the role. And the lady they found to play the Doctor is also the first Doctor to come from Yorkshire, which I'm very happy about. Also, the show now has a new writer, which means we can say goodbye to all those convoluted story arcs. You thought Coronation Street was convoluted? Try sitting through the last 3 series of Doctor Who. So, new writer, new Doctor, and Bradley Walsh is one of the companions. As I said, very much looking forward to that. Audrey is back with Lewis. As you know, we saw Lewis last week in prison, telling Audrey he would be released on Wednesday. Lewis goes over to Audrey's house, and Audrey tells Gail and the rest of her family that she's on a cruise liner with ABBA. Gail does a bit of digging and finds out from Imran that the ship that Audrey's allegedly on was actually scrapped, so it doesn't exist. And Gail thinks that her mother, Audrey, is losing her marbles. Gail keeps ringing Audrey, and Audrey doesn't pick up, which gave us a very funny line with Gail and David. She's not picking up. Well, maybe she's forgotten what a phone is. That was David, the Yorkshireman, who's lived his whole life in Manchester. Anyway, Gail decides to go to Audrey's house, where she sees, to her horror, Audrey dancing with Lewis. Audrey decides to give Lewis a second chance, even though she's not entirely sure. But she is getting towards the end of her life and she wants to enjoy it with someone and spend some time. And she tells Gail that she's not been happy and she wants to give Lewis a chance. She doesn't mind getting her heart broken again because she wants that happiness. And Gail decides to give Audrey the whole "it's me or him" cliche. One of the problems with Gail is she's so hard to take seriously sometimes. When she tries to give Audrey an intervention, she lures Audrey to the salon with David and she emerges out of nowhere just going, "This is an intervention!" And we find out from Gail that Audrey is 78 and she herself is 60, which is interesting. But Audrey is adamant that she is happy with Lewis. She doesn't want to be on her own. She loves Gail's family, but if Gail's going to make her choose, then she'll choose Lewis. But she doesn't want to choose Gail, which I think, what an appropriate way to respond to that ultimatum. And it gives us a very valuable lesson, because if anyone ever asks you to choose between them and someone else, you should always choose the person that didn't give you the ultimatum. Let that be a lesson to you, kids. Gail backs down and Lewis is allowed to stay. Lewis decides to pay a visit to some of his old friends in the street. He visits Roy. "Get out of my cafe!" Roy trying to impress Lewis with his Peggy Mitchell impression. And he decides to say hello to Rita. And she is still a little bit cross with him. But can we trust Lewis? He gave Gail £40,000. And Gail's not even said thank you to him. I mean, didn't Audrey bring her up better than that? Well, actually, that's a whole other issue that we might speak about on some other Corriedale review podcast. Gail is a very funny character, but one who at times is very hard to take seriously because of what she's doing. We saw her on Monday wearing a headset while working for Gary. As soon as Gail walked in wearing the headset, I was actually ROTFLMFAO, to be very honest with you. I found it very funny. One moment with Gail that I'll always remember, that I'll always find very funny, was a couple of years ago. It was back when Kylie was still alive, in the days before Shona noticed David and told her son to kill his wife so that she could be with him. Kylie was having a drug problem, so her family decides to set up an intervention for her. Gail gets there a little bit late in her work clothes. She's just been working as a cleaner at the bistro. That was her job back then. And the woman conducting the intervention asks Gail about her experiences, thinking that the intervention is for Gail because of the state that she's arrived in. A very funny and a very memorable scene. So what is Gail going to do with the £40,000 that Lewis has given her? Because I was thinking that maybe she would invest some of it in Maria's business. Well, no, Gail decides to keep her money, and Rita decides that she'll invest the money that she's just magicked out of nowhere into Maria's business, into Maria's hair salon. Rita says she's going to be a sleeping partner, but don't forget that Peter told Carla that he'd be a sleeping partner before he decided to go back on his word and worm his way into Carla's business. Now, Claudia has made a few appearances over the last few weeks, and I'm wondering, is she going to be a regular character or not? Because I was only expecting her to appear for a couple of episodes, but she has been in it for a while. Will she leave as soon as Maria sets up her salon, or is she going to be a street regular? I do quite like how Audrey has got a friend in Claudia, and I do like how everyone refers to them as Claude and Aud. So anyway, that were all the storylines this week. Wasn't a bad week. I'm looking forward to next week. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, especially with Sally, with her storyline. Will there be any more twists and turns on the way? But I'm dreading any interaction between Tim and Gina. My favourite character this week, without a shadow of a doubt, was David. And the human David, not the dog David. David had some funny lines this week. The one I mentioned with Gail, where she was trying to ring Audrey, wasn't picking up, and David, making fun of Gail for claiming that she was having dementia or something, said, well, maybe she's forgotten what a phone is. And David's banter with Leanne, when Leanne's like, oh, it's great to be young, free and single. And then David's like, well, free and single. Just a nice bit of harmless banter. And as I said, it's always nice to see two characters you wouldn't normally see interacting with each other, interact with each other. We used to see Leanne and David interact in the past when Leanne was going out with his brother Nick, but normally you wouldn't really see those two characters interacting. It is something that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. I always like seeing characters who wouldn't normally interact with each other just have a few lines, just say a few words to each other, because there are a lot of storylines that go on in Coronation Street. Some of them interweave with each other, others just go on alongside each other, until maybe those two characters get paired off with each other in some way. For instance, in Emmerdale, we have a relationship with Rona and Pete, and those two characters never interacted with each other before they started the relationship, and now they're inseparable. So anyway, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 storylines this week. We had Sally, we had Rana and Imran, we had Faye and Seb, we had the pub storyline, we had the Audrey storyline, we had the Sean storyline, we had the Henry storyline, and we had the Maria storyline. Anyway, that's it for this week. If you liked the video, I urge you, I pray to you, like, comment, and maybe even subscribe to Corriedale Reviews. That's right, you can subscribe, and if you subscribe, it means you'll never miss a review. Don't forget to leave a comment and like the video. Comment about whatever you like. You put anything in the comments. I would recommend maybe if I missed something this week, or if you disagreed with something I said, if you liked a particular part of the show, anything that you thought about Coronation Street, or anything in general, just put it in that comment box and let us know what you think. Until then, everybody, I've been Corriedale, and this is the Corriedale Reviews.